Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. And on this week's episode, Aaron and Kevin are talking about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Still, a couple weeks in, and we're going to keep talking about it because the worldview that Jesus inaugurated at his resurrection is the worldview that we need to have. In this world, people have all kinds of takes on where we get our hope and the purpose for living. But all of those things fall short if you remove the centrality of the resurrection of Jesus. So we'll be making sense of this, hopefully, in this conversation. Stick with us, think critically on these things. And as always, it's our goal that you'll take something that you heard in this podcast and start another conversation with somebody else. So as always, we hope you enjoy this conversation. Kevin.
Aaron.
Guten Morgen.
Hey, who's that? I know Tracy Morgan. That guy's kind of funny.
My German uncle.
Guten.
Guten.
What a guy. Good guy.
Guten Morgen.
Real good guy.
Uh-huh. Especially in the morning.
Yeah, not much of a night owl.
No.
Yeah.
You know what Guten Morgen means?
I'm guessing it means have a fantastic day.
It means good morning.
Oh. Now, if you'd have said Boker Tov, then you've been speaking my language, my friend.
Oh, Hebrew?
That's right.
Oh.
I got my coffee because Hebrews.
Oh, man. Push the button.
Oh, man. I forgot about the buttons.
Oh, that was loud.
That was so. I apologize to all of our listeners here. Technical difficulties in the studio. How do I turn that down?
The button by it.
Oh, that makes sense. That was spirit led. Oh my gosh. There it is. All right.
All right.
The crowd is
they're applauding that you're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, they're very happy about that. Well, what's up, brother?
Heaven.
Hey, that's actually a great intro, man.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, were you around for that conversation?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll run it back. No, it was so I was down in Ontonagon.
Okay.
Traveled down to Ontonagon for their life group meeting that happens on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. If you're in Ontonagon, go check out St. Paul Lutheran Church. Wednesdays at 10. Snacks, community. It's the best. What we were talking about, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
This idea of the resurrection of the Son of God, which is a thick book, thinned down in a book called Surprised by Hope, but both talking about the resurrection of Jesus. And you talked about, especially you had this line Sunday that I appreciated, which gets to the heart of why we're spending so much time on this. It's the resurrection is, I mean, if you're gonna, all the doctrines of the church, important. They're good. They're useful. Yeah. They'll help you think clearly and live in a good way. Mm-hmm. But some doctrines are more important than others. Not all doctrines are created evil. I mean, equal. Most of them, you know what, I'm going to go on to say, all of them are not created evil. But they're not equal. I mean, so there are some doctrines, and of course we want to believe rightly in all things. But this is why, especially I think in our living out of following Jesus in this context at our church at St. Peter and Paul, we actually like when we can partner up with other church bodies and people of the church, who aren't even of our, denomination, because we all follow one Lord, mm-hmm. one faith. We believe in one baptism, one Spirit. And so do we disagree on certain things? Yes, we do. But we all agree. If you're a Christian, you must agree mm-hmm. that Jesus rose from the dead. Mm-hmm. And we were reading this morning even that was something, kind of a sticking point to the apostles. Yeah. In Acts chapter 1, they said, hey, Judas is out. That guy's gone. We need somebody else. Oh, who's it going to be? Hey, someone who can witness to the resurrection of Jesus. And
mm-hmm.
that's the one. I mean, they want someone who's been there from the beginning, but the doctrine that they claim they want to witness to is the resurrection. So all this.
What was I got to stop you.
Please.
You said I had a line in my sermon?
Oh, yeah. The line had to do with, just your saying about we are emphasizing the resurrection of Jesus.
Oh, okay. Because the central
yes,
doctrine.
This is exactly the central doctrine. And it is.
Gotcha.
Everything finds its, it's got a place its kind of, coat on that. Mm-hmm. It's going to hang on that, and that's how Paul talks too in the New Testament.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, this was a very if you've been listening and you're a better listener than me, then you remember but Pastor Kevin, what about that person in Ontonagon who
I
said,
was also going to follow up on that.
I'm glad you asked. Good listener. Well, yeah, so this person just asked a thoughtful question, which we didn't get to actually in our time down there, but because we're going to keep clarifying this as we go. We're talking about the resurrection of Jesus. Okay, well, what about heaven then? And where is God? And why, when we talk about heaven, we look up, what's that all about? And there is something to that. Why did you even say that? Why'd you say look up?
Well, I was trying to be funny.
Oh, did it work? Wait, let's pull the audience.
No, they were not clapping that loud. They were, no, they weren't.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't want to get it. All right. Well, I'll do it quick, but we'll have a whole sermon in this sermon series about heaven and hell.
You're right. So let's not get too deep in the weeds.
Yeah. So we will get there. But I'll just, we're also going to do it a little bit next week too. So
you want me to do it?
No. I'll just briefly say, let me say it like this. So, when we talk about, the heavens,
yes.
So the heavens is another name for the sky, right? And it was also in the Greek language, Uranos, and the Jewish people also believed that that the heavens were up, and so that word heaven ends up being this place that's up, that we think of like.
It's a metaphor. It's literal.
Yeah.
It's literally above us, but it's also metaphorical for things that we think are bigger than us.
Yeah, I mean, we do it all the time. Like,
emotionally, we do it.
Yeah,
we say, keep your chin up.
That's what I was just going to use that phrase, right? Why are you so downtrodden?
There
right?
You go.
And so
don't look. You look so down.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what does all that stuff mean? It's the way that we speak, and we understand that things that are dying and decaying are kind of shriveling up and going down, and things that are living like plants, they grow up, right? And so
like even in movies, like sci-fi movies, usually the aliens or the super hyper intelligent beings out there that are coming to dominate our world, they don't normally come from inside of it.
Yeah.
Like they're not normally emerging. There's a movie called Tremors, but those things are not intelligent. They're just giant worms.
Okay.
Great movie series, by the way.
So kind of throughout the scriptures and early thinking too, it was always sort of like God is bigger than what we can see. So he's not bound by space and time because he created these things. So we just kind of think of like he's kind of everywhere. So he's sort of out, right? Yeah. And it is at the ascension of Jesus too, that we kind of see this play out. Acts chapter 1, I believe it's verse 10. And Jesus has just ascended, or it might be a little bit farther. Yeah, Acts chapter 1, look it up. Yeah. Jesus ascends into heaven, and after he ascends into heaven, this is after 50 days after his resurrection, he ascends into heaven. No, not 50, 40. I'm sorry. 50 days is Pentecost. 40 days after his resurrection, he ascends into heaven. And then the disciples look up. They look up into heaven, it says. And then angels come and say, "Why are you staring at where he is gone? Don't you know that he will come again from that same place, just as you saw him go?" And so we just kind of have this, idea that the heaven's out there somewhere. And
so spatial. I mean, what we're kind of saying is, it's almost as if this idea is woven into the fabric of reality. Because we all talk this way and we kind of think this way, and we use it metaphorically, to mean, and there's something even just when you look up at the heavens, the sky, the stars, the moon, the northern lights. Last night saw them again.
Yeah, me
another
too.
side. It inspires wonder. in a person. You know, it makes you think of and you're not even thinking, it's true. The world is bigger. There's more going on, you know? And it's kind of, you know, starts to get you thinking like, man, how is this even possible? I mean, it starts to lead you in a sort of questions about the universe that at some point you're going to run into the God question. Like, how could this all exist? How could this be? You know? So like, it just makes sense that we associate God with the heavens.
Yeah.
And especially because since we believe God is creator, he's outside of it. And again, so you're not going to go digging. You're not going to look for him underground.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's probably good enough. We'll talk about hell in a few weeks.
Yeah. Well, we're going to just, if you're wondering about heaven, just keep sticking with us. I think what we're trying to emphasize though is what the Bible emphasizes. Okay, and what the Bible emphasizes is that God created everything, the whole creation. He created it out of love because He is love in His essence. God is love, so He created out of love, and He created humanity to be His image bearers of love, to receive it themselves and reflect love back to the Creator, and to reflect His love to the creation.
Yeah, very good.
And that's how things are supposed to be.
Things go well when they follow that sort of pattern.
Yeah, and you can imagine that they would.
Yeah,
right?
kind of a harmony and
yeah. When you're just imagine, right? If you are always receiving true love, right? You're receiving true love, and you're giving true love. That's outside of yourself because you received it and you're reflecting it. Things go better in your relationships.
Yeah, people, right? I mean, not always 100% of the time, but in general, people don't retaliate against you in bitter rage and hatred when you treat them in love.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so that's what God created. Humanity, though, chose what was evil. They chose to rebel against God instead of reflecting His love and trusting that. They wanted to put their hope basically in themselves and do what God didn't intend them to do. And so that, and again, we've got some sermons coming up. I think that will keep expounding on what is this thing called evil, but let's just throw that in here too, which is evil is not something that God created. Evil is something that we bring into this world.
Right.
So we bring evil when we choose to not live according to God's love and law and will.
Right. Yeah, if everything that He is love and integrity and truth and goodness and righteousness, then to do anything outside or apart from God is going to by necessity be not one of those things.
And that is evil.
Yeah, that's
right?
the word we use to kind of summarize it all.
Yeah.
And so that ends up becoming somewhat of the narrative. So what you just said about humanity basically having a trust, we got trust issues. So we don't trust God, but instead...
And we don't trust one another.
Well, yes, and that kind of, those things work together. But we don't trust God, and so therefore we're trusting ourselves to sort of save ourselves, or to create, the kind of life or world that we want. And that's kind of what leads to where you went on Sunday, right? And maybe the connection is, whether your chin's up and you're looking up, but maybe at the wrong sort of source, or whether you're down in the dumps and you're looking at the same source and you're like not as excited about it, right? Yeah. But in both cases, so you talked about progress and despair.
Yeah.
So it's kind of three options in this life. This is a overly simplistic way of putting it.
Yeah.
Right.
And if it sounds complicated, it's actually we're making you're getting the boiled down version.
This is the simple version.
But maybe I think it's worthwhile in this podcast getting into it even a little bit more what these things are and how they manifest themselves.
Absolutely, because you'll see, as we talk about some of those examples that, and you said this in your sermon as well, pay attention this week, keep your ears open. You'll hear people talking in one of these two likely camps. Yeah. There's a third way. That's the way we're purporting.
Right.
And the way the apostles and Jesus himself said, hey, I've come to bring this way, if you will. But yeah, so the ways of progress and despair.
Yeah. Well, let's start. I want to start with just real briefly saying the biblical view. So again, we are we believe that the resurrection of Jesus gives us a worldview.
Yes.
So the resurrection of Jesus gives us a framework by which we see everything.
Mm-hmm.
So the resurrection of Jesus is transformative for our minds, our bodies, our spirit, our conduct. The resurrection of Jesus changes all of that. It transforms our interaction in this creation. So we're trying to teach a biblical worldview in this sermon series, so that you shape your life in a certain kind of way. Okay, because everybody's got a worldview.
Yep.
Everybody's got and so these two, as I said, insufficient worldviews are kind of the two major camps, but the variations on these things are numerous.
Sure.
And you'll see people even like in one breath cling to one and the other breath cling to the other. So it may seem like these are two opposite sides of the spectrum, and they kind of are philosophically, and yet people hold both of them at weird times. So basically if you remove the truth of the resurrection of Jesus Christ and don't get that right, you're gonna slip into something else, into a different kind of worldview. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's chat about this a little bit. So again, the first insufficient one is progress, which we kind of defined as things are just getting better and better and better, and will keep getting better and better. So N.T. Wright in his book also titles this, another title of progress is evolutionary optimism.
Okay, Tell us more about that. Why that title?
So a lot of people that believe in this idea of progress, as we know it today, and I mentioned the age of the Enlightenment. So this idea of human progress really became prevalent in the 1700s with the age of enlightenment. As scientific advancement was taking center stage. Charles Darwin is a product of this worldview himself. And so, the guy who discovered evolution, I guess you would say, or popularized the idea,
coined the idea,
that, that God did not create everything, that everything was, it's just gases and dusts a long time ago, and all combined and smashed together, and give it billions of years and you get this, right? Intelligent life out of
and underpinning that, right, I think is the idea that this is a necessity. Evolution is essential to how life goes, right? So like you let nature run its course, and you're gonna get more evolved creatures, species, et cetera, like this is the path. Yeah. And nature is going to take care of that. Like nature is not going to be duped and confused and think, oh, I better not do this, because that's, no, nature is going to default to choosing, this is the idea of natural selection. So it chooses the traits that are going to lead to the survival of the natural world, including all mankind.
Correct. But then there are people who seize on that and say, well, it's also part of the natural world for me to do what I want to do. And so you get people like Adolf Hitler, who kind of under the guise of like human progress wanted to eliminate certain people from this world who he thought were insignificant, and the Jews were parasites, and so we'll get rid of them and we'll become stronger.
Yeah, which is again in accordance with evolutionary theory, right? So natural selection, it is the strong will survive. Yeah. So it's kind of so as a human then, thinking along the lines of evolution, I look at the world and say, well, which people are kind of the parasites? Which people are bringing us down? Which people are really sucking our resources? And we'd do so much better if they weren't around. Yeah. So it's very much a consistent thought. Yeah. Darwin to Hitler. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So progress, like progress in one breath will say things are getting better and better, and just give the right people kind of the right amount of power, and they'll get it straightened out in the right amount of time. And yet that same worldview, like an evolutionary process minded worldview, also says that that we're bleeding our resources dry, that everything's, we're running out of fossil fuels, the globe is heating up, and the sun is expanding, and we're all gonna burn up someday, unless a meteor comes and wipes us all out before that, or the aliens invade. There are
hyper
or AI takes over. So like
those giant worms.
Yeah. So like, I mean, progress, like, will say things are getting better and better. And like I mentioned in my sermon, I listened to this TED talk where there was a man, great fan of the Enlightenment and scientific advancement, and was basically like proving the point that the human project of ingenuity and scientific advancement is making the world a better place. So like child mortality rates have decreased, accidental deaths, famine, poverty, all this stuff's like, we're doing pretty good on those things,
Yeah. And it's worthwhile mentioning that, like saying there is some validity, and you said that as well. There's validity to either of these views.
Yeah.
And one of the ways experientially you could say, well, doesn't it seem like we are progressing? Is when I read a history book, and I read not even long ago history.
Yeah, like if you lived in this country 150 years ago, like, man, you have to like
completely different.
Go pump your water from a well and poop outside and stuff.
Exactly. Where do I plug in my iPhone?
Yeah. I know our power went out like the other day for like 3 hours. My kids were like, "Can we do this thing?" I was like, "Nope." Can we do it? I was like, "No." I was like, "Go outside, I guess." I don't.
And it's a great, it's a refreshing sort of experience sometimes when that happens, and you realize, oh, well, there's a big difference between what I want and what I need, in this world. Like back then, I wouldn't have had my headphones on. I wear headphones a lot at church. That way I don't have to talk to anybody. Back then you had to talk to people. Unbelievable. How do they live? No, I'm just kidding. I like you can come talk to me anytime, folks.
So
we do see progress.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's like, this is what all right. So I want to make something clear. Like, I think most all of humanity that is good-natured desires a lot of the same things. Like most people do not. Most people desire the world to be a better place. Right? Most people believe that we, should not die prematurely, and so we should, try to help people with, medicines or whatever it is that they need to have life go longer. And that's a good thing to do, to look out for our neighbors and to tend to those things. So, encouraging your kids to wear their seatbelts in the car is like a good thing to do. But, is that part of progress? Well, I guess in some ways it is. Like, people discovered, oh, well, that'd be a good way to like preserve life, and the fact that cars have airbags and all these things. It's like, we don't need to throw ourselves back to the Stone Age and think like, well, there was some like time of,
yes, it's better. It was better then.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. But what you're saying, it does, a part of what we're saying, at least, is we're appealing to a belief that we suppose most of humanity holds, which is that life is inherently good.
Yeah, and I want to believe that, but then I hear some people speak, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't value life.
No, I actually was just listening to another podcast, and I didn't know this, so I haven't read into this at all. But a fellow on the podcast was talking about, I guess, in Canada. Have you heard about euthanasia in Canada?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this podcast was recent. He was saying last year there were 10,000 euthanasia incidents, and that they're even doing euthanasia for youth in Canada. Yeah. But we are seeing, I mean, like, sadly, in our time and context, we are seeing somewhat of a manifestation of, like if your beliefs dictate how you are, what you do, like if your belief about the future informs how you live in the present, then the rise that we're seeing in kind of the realms of, let's say, suicide, depression, anxiety, all these things, that gives you a little bit of a sense of what people believe about their future, right? If you don't believe, that life is a good thing, or that, there is let's say there's a creator who is doing something, right? Who will be doing some good with your life, even if in the moment it's dark and hard to see that, or, impossible to see that, and you have to take it on, just trust. If you don't have that resource for you to generate hope for your life, that helps you understand why these sorts of things are happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't want to get too confusing here, but it's in that kind of argument where, how I mentioned, like, sometimes in one breath, people will move from like the idea of progress to despair.
That's right.
And I think this is an example of where that's true, because, people would say, like with progress, right, where we've got these medicines where we can, affectionately end somebody's life in a compassionate and caring way. And we've been given this resource, and so we can do that. But they may do that also from the viewpoint of a despair, which is that this material world doesn't really matter. Your body doesn't matter. This life doesn't matter. What matters is some sort of spiritual existence beyond this place.
Yeah.
And so that was that's the teaching of Plato. This is a prolific kind of thinking that's invaded our Western world for a long time, and is still very prevalent in American society, where it's sort of like, just, we're just passing through this life. So just, if you're not having a good time here, we'll just speed that up and get you out of here and get to your better place.
Yeah. Who knows what the next thing is, but it's got to be better than the physical life I'm experiencing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how some people will move from like progress to despair in one breath,
Sure.
Which is a sad reality,
Yeah.
But
I think, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say too, like, just talking about like like some people do not value life. I mean, there's that example. And I was watching a video of a group that's advocating for life and trying to end abortion. Okay. And they were on a college campus and engaging in conversations with college students about abortion and about the fact that this is an unjustified taking of life, and this is humanity, right? And so there was this one conversation that this guy was having. It was a long conversation with a college student, and they were kind of working on this conversation. And a young lady just came up, just so angry, and just invaded the conversation using profanity and just basically just shouted at the people and said, "If I have a baby, I'm going to kill that baby." It's just like, just that
raw.
Yeah. And I'm like, I can't, I mean, it's so unfathomable to me, like that kind of, I don't know, vitriolic hatred. Yeah. But just,
well, even just the notion of, if you're to have a belief that life isn't good, inherently. Yeah. Well, that was a pretty despairing sort of remark. So maybe we should
let's talk about despair.
Hopefully that fleshed out progress well enough for you. Let's hit despair.
Yeah. So despair again comes from the idea of Plato, about 400 years before Jesus. The thinking that that physical life, material things, space and time, they're just a shadow of something greater. So there's a bigger reality at play than just what you can see. Some would take it farther then, and also say that what you can touch and see is actually evil.
Yeah, right.
This is I didn't use this term in my sermon because a lot of people don't know it, but the the terminology is actually the word Gnosticism, which comes from a Greek word to know, gnosis. And so basically the whole idea of Gnosticism, this is what's being refuted hardcore in the New Testament.
Right.
By a firm teaching of God's good creation and the resurrection of Jesus.
Yep. Physical realm's good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Physical realm is good. And see, when I just want to slow it down for a second, because I think when if this is new thinking for you, when we say that the physical world is good, your body was created to be good, and the body that you have, you're going to have a physical body for all of eternity. That may be different thinking than the way that you've thought before.
Right.
I did not always think this way.
Same.
I oftentimes thought that the scope of life was this is kind of life now, but this isn't good. It's not, I'm not supposed to be in a body that's going to die. And so someday when I die, I'll be released from this body that dies, and I'll be, well, no longer a body. I'll be something that doesn't die, and I'll go to heaven and, be gone from this body.
That's right.
And so that, and again, I think that's kind of the predominant Christian thinking in a lot of our minds for the last 150 so years in the Western world.
Right. If heaven, even just that word heaven, is kind of the ultimate language that you use for like the ultimate hope of your Christianity, that somewhat belies that you are thinking this way, because the New Testament, Jesus, they're all talking about the resurrection of the dead, which has so much more of that physical undertone that you just don't get when you talk about the word heaven. Like if you say heaven, you might even be thinking of a physical body. It's possible. It's possible to talk about that. But a lot of people who hear you say the word heaven will not be. They'll be thinking of kind of a not this body experience. This body's gone. It's different.
Well, and that's what all the movies and stuff in books in our culture that talk about heaven, it's some sort of disembodied state, right? And that's even like you get all these like near-death experience stories where people like floated above their body and could see their body and went towards the light and I don't know.
And there could be some validity even to those stories.
Yeah,
but not as the ultimate hope.
Right.
Of our faith.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there was a really popular book a couple of years back called Heaven is Real.
Heaven is for Real.
Heaven is for Real.
Yeah, I read that one.
Young boy who died and went and sat on Pop's lap and all this stuff.
Yep.
And, met his grandpa and came back. And
touching story.
It is. It is. And, but if the problem with that is if that's the case, what stops that kid from like running into the street and ending his life so that he can get back to that place?
Right. It starts to reinforce, and this is the point, right? We were talking at the beginning of doctrines of the church, and they're all good because they'll help you think right and see life undistorted. And if you get them wrong, well, then you start to have distorted views, and that is part of the problem of making heaven that ultimate hope and reality. Is it can make you undermine and undervalue your present life, which God has created to be good and is planning on extending it forever. But not as you know it, and that's the big thing, right? It's not like if you got problems with your body, you're not going to have a problematic body in the resurrection. It's going to be transformed, just like Jesus was when he showed up. If he was still the bloodied, whipped guy they just seen, they probably been like, "Oh, hey, Jesus, you look badly injured." Be like the guy from The Princess Bride, mostly dead.
Yeah, well, and so, but that worldview, yes, deals with us as individuals, but it also strips away any like purpose for tending to the creation.
Yeah, because what good is it?
Right. And so unfortunately, I think a lot of there's been a lapse in Christian caring for the things of this world.
Yeah.
Like the environment and social justice and don't know, people living in poverty or, racial issues and all these things
Real
of the
tangible.
flesh.
Yeah.
And because I think, I don't know, you can't like pinpoint this and say this is the cause, but
Sure.
I can see a rational connection between these things. If you have a mindset of despair that this world doesn't really matter, we're just kind of passing through, we just got to get out of here and get on by, then it's very easy to sort of stop caring.
Well, yeah.
in a way that lasts about the things of this life.
You're telling me your beliefs impact the way you are today?
Yeah.
Well, it's even like when I lived in an apartment, I was passing through. I didn't own it.
Okay.
I rented it, If there was something wrong with it, who cares? The next guy will deal with it. I'll cover it up.
Scrape that bacon grease right into the drain. Who cares if it clogs? Right?
Literally, have you been listening to our conversations? Yeah, exactly. But once we bought a house, now that we own it, now that this is ours, no, I do care about it. I want to treat it well, and partly because I'm selfish, But that's the thing. This world is God's, and He's saying, no, yes, it is. I'm giving it to you. That's what He did at the beginning.
Yeah.
Tend it, take care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have some sermons and whole conversations on these practical issues, like what does the resurrection mean for about the way that I care for the creation. But
That's right.
So I didn't finish my point though. The like a lot of Christians have had the worldview of despair, thinking that we're just passing through, we just got to get by. Have neglected caring for the creation, have neglected caring for those who are poor or vulnerable, and have just sort of given up on that. And then other people who kind of like have the worldview of progress apart from Jesus have taken those things,
Sure,
and embraced them under the guise of progress that will just let us
create a better society.
Let us have these things and we'll deal with it.
Yeah.
And so you might see some of this stuff play out, like if you
Look
kind
around.
of evaluate the world in this way. So let's bring it back to the simple reality that God created all things.
Yep.
He made it all good. He put us here to be very good, to be His image bearers in the world. We haven't done that well.
No.
Jesus came to start something new, the resurrection from the dead,
Yeah.
and the restoration of all creation. And so we now live in light of the resurrection of Jesus, living as though Jesus is actually Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
living as though God is here with us.
in that we are even living in the new creation.
Yes.
And this is what is so cool. So this is a little theological nerdy thing.
This is where we're going next week, but go ahead.
The 7 days?
Oh, no. No, never mind.
Okay.
The new creation, though.
Yeah, exactly. So the world was created in 7 days, So Sunday to Saturday, and on the seventh day, Saturday, that's when Jesus, or God, well, all of them, the Spirit too, throw them in, they all rested from their labor. And Jesus, this is not incidental, Jesus' resurrection just so happens to come on the first day of the week, Sunday. And that's metaphorical in some sense, or you can see the significance of that as in Jesus is inaugurating or starting a new creation, and He's the first one. He has risen from the dead. He's the first fruit. Everything else is going to follow. And guess what? All the disciples are going to get the Holy Spirit. You know what that is? That's another mark of the new creation that didn't exist for follow. And that's always blown my mind, man. You live in the Old Testament, like the Spirit was around, He existed, but you didn't have Him in a personal way. Not accessible to everyone. This is new creation stuff. Guess what day that came? Sunday. Because this is, again, it's just the new creation. It's all kicking off. It's all starting. And so this is why, we don't just live this way because we think God is going to do this. Eventually, He's already started to do it. And that's what Romans 8, you had us read Romans 8, and it says the creation is even looking to us, the sons of God. It's like, our hope. Creation is like, calling out to us saying, please, you are our hope,
You're the image bearers of God.
That's right. And we're only creation's hope because Jesus is our hope.
Yeah.
So it's really, really neat how all it kind of dovetails together. So
to our listeners, Kevin and I are very passionate about this stuff.
If you couldn't tell. We're that passionate times 10.
Because what we have come to see again is that we have to have a biblical worldview where Jesus is central and where the resurrection of Jesus is central. So that's what we're doing is bringing the resurrection of Jesus front and center, and just showing you how it changes everything and transforms everything. So much more of this to come.
Amen.
Next week we're bringing in a special guest.
Heyo.
So we're gonna have a third here, and I'll even tell you who it is. It's gonna be Jesse Johnson. The people are excited.
Wow.
Owner of Gartner's Gallery in Hancock.
The one and the same.
Okay, he doesn't only sell couches, but he's a big fan of Jesus and the resurrection from the dead and the life of the world to come. So we're going to be chatting about Jesse's framework and worldview, and just having another voice in here, and that'll be fun.
Looking forward to it, man.
So you can see that it's not just guys that went to seminary that are thinking on these things. All right. So Kevin, as always, bud, good to sit and chat.
Cheers, brother.